Rick grew up in the auto industry and watched it destroy itself and ruin millions of workers' lives and small businesses that were supporting the industry. The lessons learned by the survivors were about applying business principles to the manufacturing sector with things like Six Sigma, and Rick wondered, why not in the revenue generation sector? Sales, marketing, business development, etc., were suffering with the same myths that ruined manufacturing. So how about applying the same principled thinking in this sector? Applying principled thinking starts with kicking out the myths that haunt every phase of today's revenue efforts. This talk will help everyone stop doing dumb stuff from the last century and receiving the benefits of the principles immediately. Please give a warm welcome to Rick McPartland.
Every one of us in this room has been poisoned. It's not the type of poison that you're going to be on the floor convulsing. You're not going to lose your hair. It's not going to kill your body this afternoon. It's not the type of poison that was delivered through bad air or in your orange juice this morning. It's the type of poison that wasn't delivered by your enemy or somebody who doesn't like you or is jealous of what you have. This poison has been delivered by friends, teachers, mentors, your employers. And it wasn't delivered in malice. It was delivered to try to help. But the result will be, it will ruin your career. It will ruin your business. It can ruin families and communities and even states. So what I want to do today is help you figure out how to avoid that poison. And those of us who've already got it, I want to show you what it takes to get rid of it and actually apply the antidote in a way that it propels your business. So that's our mission today. And to start with, I want to give you a quiz. I'm going to show you a series of words, phrases, statements, and the first person who figures out the way to describe those, the bucket you want to put them in, I just want you to shout it out. Don't keep it silent. This is something we're going to share with everybody. So tell me what these phrases and words mean. What's the bucket they belong in?
Customer service.
Keep going. Want to hear from everybody.
Sales.
Yep, they fit in those.
Donald Trump.
Miss. Whoever said it, miss is the answer. Show of hands again in the miss leader back there. Our conversation today is going to be about two things. It's going to be about the myths that we're living with that have poisoned our brains, because myths are, in our definition, defined as partially true statements of evidence. So there's some truth in them. They're kind of true occasionally. They're true in certain situations or in certain frames of time, but they aren't really true. And some of them are downright dangerous. If you're the witch, that's a really downright dangerous one. What counteracts a myth is principles-based. And I love Joel's comment about significance. You know, principles, significance, values, those kinds of things are what counteract it. So before we get deep into this, I want to show you an example of how these myths impact American business. And they impact companies as small as one or two people, and I'm guessing there's some of us in that room, and they impact huge corporations. So the next question I want to ask is, there's a job in almost every company in North America that the job, if you had a full-time delivery of that job, if somebody did it 40 hours a week, that job would cost you $520,000 a month for just one 40-hour execution of that job. Motherhood. Oh, I think it's much bigger for motherhood. Much bigger number. Much bigger number. Can anybody take a guess in small, medium-sized, large businesses? What job is it out there that if you got 40 hours of it? Now, just to give you a frame of reference for that, if I were a neurosurgeon, I might not be here today, but if I were a neurosurgeon, how many hours in a week do you think I actually do surgery? 10, yeah, something like that. So if you really needed 40 hours a neurosurgeon, you'd need 4 people, right? Okay, so this is that kind of situation. The humans can't actually deliver 40 hours. One person can't deliver it in 40 hours. But what's the position that if you get 40 hours of it in a week, would act, and every one of you are involved in it. So it's not like this isn't you guys. You guys are in the middle of this. What's the job? Sales. If you want a full-time salesperson, that's 40 hours a week, it's $520,000 a month. Now, you're all going, he's full of it. So let me ask a couple of questions. And Loretta didn't warn you. I'm a recovering cost accountant.
I didn't know that.
I keep it quiet most of the time. And so when I look at these numbers, I've really looked at these numbers. Now, let's just play with this for a minute. If we're going to measure how much a full-time 40-hour-a-week salesperson would cost us in a month, we're going to measure what's going on, right? So how many of you have an operational definition of selling? What is it?
Selling is helping.
Selling is helping. That's, when I say operational, it's we can see it, we can measure how many hours we do it, and we can teach it to somebody else. So anybody else got a definition?
I'll take a whirl at it. Getting a identified prospect to sign the dotted line.
That, I have asked over 3,000 people that question. That's the best answer I've ever gotten. If I want to propagate this, measure this, as a cost accountant, my definition is you're moving a deal forward. No deal, no selling. Now, that doesn't mean the only thing salespeople do is move deals forward. They got to fill out forms, they got to go to meetings, they got to do all kinds of things, but those things are not selling. We have these myths about what selling is. At the end of the year, do you think the salespeople who move a lot of deals forward and close them get fired? No. But the people who do all that other stuff, cold calling, networking, going to meetings, driving around, and they don't close any deals, what happens to them? They're gone. So let's own what it is we mean when we say selling, and every one of us in the room have to sell. Okay, so let's get really clear about what selling is and what it isn't. And part of what it isn't a job that requires a human. What is the best selling organization in the world today? Amazon is always the first answer. Netflix, Apple, and Apple, pardon? Well, the internet's the tool. It's a tool they use, absolutely. But so selling today, when you think it, when I came up, if you asked that question, it would have been Xerox or IBM or somebody like that. But today, the best-selling organizations in the world don't have any people. So what that means for us is we can sell without having to have hundreds of hours personally moving deals forward. We can start and move deals forward without the human in the game. So as you plan your careers and you plan to expand your business, you need to recognize it isn't just you in front of that prospect. It's a whole series of things you do. The other part about this is if it is human, and of course we all are, now we have a definition. It's moving a deal forward. So how many hours in a week do you think the average sales force, the people in the average sales force, actually do that? Ten. Five? Three? We did a number of studies with Fortune 500 companies. The first 3 companies we did, they were within 1 minute of each other. 1 minute. They were either 47 minutes a week or 48 minutes a week. Now, we also did it with Johnson & Johnson a few years later, and to Johnson & Johnson's credit, they were at 4. The humans worked 60 hours, and they actually were able to move deals forward, 4 hours. To Johnson & Johnson's credit, they were appalled. They said, 4 hours? These people work 7 days a week. They can only do 4 hours? Partially they were appalled for them, and partially they were appalled for the bottom line. But they were appalled. They asked us to come back 2 years later and do the study. 2 years later, the humans only worked 50 compared to 60. And they sold 10 instead of 4. Now imagine the impact on the corporation of those people selling 2.5 times as much as they did before. What do you expect? Revenues go way up, absolutely. But what are the other consequences? Absolutely, less turnover. And so your recruiting costs go down, your training costs go down, and who comes to work for you? Who's applying? The best in the world want to work for you because they only want to work 50 hours. And they want to be able to sell 10, and they want to make a whole lot more money. So once somebody threw out the myths that salespeople have to go network, and they got to take people to ball games, and they got to do all those kinds of things, once that myth left, everybody got happier. One of the other parts of that myth is people believe sales is a relationship business. And there's tons of research out today that says that is absolutely not true. And here's a good example for you. Imagine your best friend's son or daughter comes to you to sell you something over $10,000. And they work for a company that you don't trust. Would you buy something from them at $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 if they work for a company you don't trust? Not a chance. So it's not about my relationship with the salesperson. I can love you, but if you work for a company I don't trust, not a chance. So today, the first critical relationship is brand to brand. And if you go back to the fact that selling is moving deals forward and that people can today, we'll talk about this a little more later, opt into you, they're opting in because they trust your brand. Or at least they trust it enough they want to learn more. So this $520,000 is when you divide the real cost of the salesperson's total salary by the 47 minutes they actually sell, and then multiply times the number of days in a month. And that's what it costs. And I've talked to tens of thousands of companies, and rarely is it much different than they finally get to 2 or 3 hours of actual selling. But you can get to 10 or 12. And so that's part of where we got to throw out that old thinking and replace it with some new thinking. So let's get a place to start on how we attack this, because every one of you has all these issues of how do you make the most of the time you have to move deals forward, and how do you make it easy for people to find you and trust you. Because if they find you and trust you, what do you think that does to your sales opportunity? What are the outcomes if they find you, they think you're the right place, and they're starting a conversation from that frame of reference? What do you think the sales outcomes are? Pardon? Well, yeah, first, they close faster, because if I trust you, I don't have to do weeks of due diligence to figure that out. And they already know approximately what you do, and so they don't have to spend a lot of time kind of doing due diligence on what do you do. And so your cycles are slower, or your cycles are shorter, your percentage of wins are higher, and they almost always pay you more. Because when we discount or we ask for discounts or we try and negotiate, we're negotiating to cover our risk. I've never done business with you before. I'm not sure I can trust you. I'm certainly not going to pay you as much as somebody I already know and I can trust. So when you think about it in this different way, you get such different outcomes. All right, we already said a myth is a partially true idea or story that is believed by many people and is not true. I'm older than most of the people in the room, and as Loretta said, I grew up in the auto industry. And I watched the auto industry destroy itself. And it destroyed itself for a number of reasons, mostly because it didn't listen. It didn't listen to anybody about anything. But it didn't listen because it was believing myths. Growing up in Michigan, there was a saying, what's good for GM is good for the country. And we believed that myth, okay? Now when we take a step back, and I'm a History Channel fanatic. I don't know how many of you are in the History Channel, but if we look at the history of buying-selling relationships for 10,000 years, we did business with people in our neighborhood who we trusted, who understood us. We understood them. We knew their kids. We went to the same church. All those things we had in common. Huge degree of trust. And if I was the little retailer there selling whatever I'm selling, I knew your family and I knew your neighbors. And so if you came to me, I was trying to help and protect you. I wasn't trying to just reach in your pocket and take money, because I would be very short-lived in the neighborhood if I did that, right? At the start of last century, for the first time in the history of the world, that changed. And what changed about it was mass production. For the first time ever, if you want a table, I don't have to take 2 months to build you a table. I just got to break the box open. And the other thing that happened was the humans had enough money to buy the table and the chairs today, maybe on credit, but they could buy it. So what that created is a fulfillment environment. As a company, I quit thinking about helping you, helping your family, and I started thinking about how do I fulfill the demand that's out there, because nobody's got a car, and by the end of the century, they got 3. When I worked for GM, the first 7 years, every meeting was about capacity. We knew every car we built, we'd sell. And that was true with refrigerators or airplanes or computers in the early days. And what those things are called are bubbles. They're demand bubbles that are temporary in nature. And when they happen, it's all about fulfillment if we want to let it be. We can be very bad, greedy, selfish business people and make a lot of money because the market needs, one more Cabbage Patch doll. And so some of the myths that we're living with today were created in bubbles. And in the auto industry, we controlled the world for 40 years. After World War II, no other place on the planet could build cars, period. So we thought we were good. We were lucky. But the bubble was real. And we sold billions and billions of dollars worth of cars. But when the bubble burst, what do you think? We had good, lean, strong companies with great values. But now it's funny. But when we were in the middle of it, we believed all this crap. And so most of the things we've been taught in school and the lessons we've learned from other speakers aren't true. They were true at a place, a time, a situation. Now, any of us who've been in Arizona a while, I think we had a bubble a little while ago. Does anybody remember what that was? I was given a talk like this just a few blocks from my house up in Moon Valley at the country club. And most of the people in the room I knew, and they were my neighbors. And they all were in the construction, housing, real estate, something business. And at the break, the lady sitting to my left, who lived about 4 doors from me, she said to me, "Rick, you don't get it. We don't sell. We don't market. We stand right next to the fax machine, and we wait for a request for pricing. And if it comes from a construction firm we like, we give them a reasonable price, and we lie about delivery. And if it comes from somebody we don't know or don't trust, we tell them the truth about delivery, and we jack up the price, and we still win half of those." Now, you think that's a bubble? And do you think it created myths? Those people actually believed they ran good businesses? They actually believed that that was going to extend on into the future and that they were going to keep getting richer and richer and richer? Only one of those companies is in business today. So those partially true evidence things, part of our job, both for ourselves and for our clients, if we let our clients perpetuate myths and we're part of it, what's that say about us? I mean, you're letting them take more poison. What's that say about us when we do that? I don't know about you, I'm not comfortable with that. The second thing is a principle is a fundamental truth or proposition that serves as the foundation for a system. Heard a study the other day, and I won't get this exactly right, but the idea is close, that half of the data in the world has been created in the last 2 years. So when you think about that degree of chaos and change, which has more long-term value? A principle or a guideline or a belief that we have, or the details about how we execute? Whatever the execution is today, it's not going to be the same tomorrow. So when we think about something important, principles are the highest level of a business. And we don't ever talk, or seldom do we talk about the principles our businesses stand for. Now, I'll give you some exceptions to that. If you want to think of great companies, most of the great companies that have lasted through recessions and depressions and over again, they lead with a principle. If I say to you the happiest place on earth, Disney, everybody in the room knows it. If I say to you the ultimate driving machine, BMW, when you look at great companies, they have either clearly stated, articulated principles, which those two do, or they live the principles and they choose not to spend as much time, with the one-liner. And if I were to say Harley or Nordstrom's, those are people who live those principles to such an extent, as soon as you say the name, we all are going, I get that, they're cool, I want to be part of that. The other thing is, just so we all know, for yourselves, when you are dealing with your clients, once somebody trusts your principles, they are very forgiving when you make a mistake. And they will defend you and support you and help you overcome it if they share the principle with you. But if all you've told them is tactical stuff, what do they hold you accountable for? Tactical stuff. And the first time you mess up, that's bad, because that's what they've held you accountable for. That's how they're thinking about you. So principles are a really big deal for us. Now we're going to do some quizzes today, since I don't want to talk all the time. And I want you to tell me, there's 2 choices here. If I'm building a great company, I want to build a really great company, which one of these 2 is a myth? One, absolutely. The myth is, it's about me. It's about my goals, my money, my future. Now, when you're finding a vendor, a partner, somebody to help you, do you want them telling you how great they are and what they get when you give them your money? Is that what you want from them? What do you want from them? Absolutely. What can they do for you? So this century, last century, you got away with being self-centered. And if you think about a lot of the supposedly great companies last century, they were all about how do we make money every day. That's what they talked about and thought about. And if you were in negotiation with most companies last century, was it win-win or win-lose? It was win-lose because it was about them getting more of your money as opposed to less of your money. So this century, it's about the buyer's problem. We're not going to do this today, but there is a very specific thing called a revenue strategy. And the core of a revenue strategy for you or your clients or the companies you work for, if you work for somebody else, is the ability to answer the question, what's the customer problem you solve for the customer that no one else solves? And we're going to talk more about this later, but this is the foundation to power. And when Joel talked earlier, he was presenting a solution to a problem that I've never heard anybody else present. So I think he's got a solution to our problem that nobody else out there's got. That's the kind of thing you're looking for. That's where the power comes from. That's how you create a partnership, not a vendor relationship. Okay, so this one, principle or myth? Everyone will know when they're in a bubble. It's an illusion, yeah. It's absolutely a myth. People don't know. And this kind of bubble is created. Somebody said the other day, that's about greed. Yeah, it's either greed or selfishness. I either want the Cabbage Patch doll for my granddaughter, and I want to take it away from you, or I'm going to try and buy this house, flip it before the bank tells me I've got to start making payments. It's a selfish thing. So we have to create our own thinking to be sure what we're doing is principle-based, not bubble-based. Because if we just live the moment, it's easy to be in the bubble. And speaking of people who are in the bubble, does anybody recognize who this might be? And Blockbuster is such a great example because for a while, they made a lot of money. And they defined themselves as people who got first tapes and then CDs or DVDs out to the market, and they took their money and they negotiated for price and proposals and so on and so forth. Now, Netflix comes along, and what did Netflix do that was different, fundamentally, principally different?
No late fees.
That was a tactical part of it. But they ask another question first. What was the question they asked? That's true, too. That's another tactical piece. But what was the principles piece that they asked?
Do you need a store?
Well, yeah, that's really close. It's what's the problem the market has? Was the market having the problem of going to a store and Blockbuster has a nice store? Or was it they really want the entertainment in a variety of different ways and modalities and, contracts and so on and so forth? The problem the world had is we want more digital entertainment. How can you help us get more digital entertainment in a convenient, easy way that, lets me entertain my family or my friends or myself? So they ask a fundamentally different question. That's why they have been able to move back and forth to different ways to distribute and different pricing models and different places on the planet because they ask a different question. And it was a customer-facing question, not a how do we make more money at Blockbuster. So this century, the myth isn't about how much money we make from our standpoint. It's how do we bring the most value to the market. And when you answer that, as Netflix has done, or Disney has done, or Nike has done, guess what? you make a boatload of money. You make a lot more money because people pay you more. So, another myth or principle. The CEO's primary job is getting the right people on the bus. Yes? No? No? We had a yes over here? Yeah, she don't want to admit it, but she was going, yeah.
It is, but it's after you've already set your principles. And
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
that one piece of the
That's absolutely right. I've been to so many talks where people are telling us all these elaborate ways to interview and test and evaluate, and I have no idea what they're evaluating against. You know, what's the really good result of this? Now, when you look at principle-based companies, I have so many friends who worked at Disney like when they were 20. And today, that's still the best job they ever had. It's the most fun they ever had when they were getting paid. They just loved the experience. Apple has 20,000, actually 25,000 engineers who have submitted applications to work for Apple, and Apple pays 20% below market. Why is that? They want to work there. It's cool. It's interesting. We're doing good things for the world. I want to work a place that does good things for the world. I just don't want to check. And so when we think about the right people on the bus, the way you do that is right on the front of the bus where it's going. And then the right people will show up. If you don't write where it's going on the front of the bus, you better offer me a huge amount of money, and then don't be surprised when I leave when I find a bus going where I want to go. So that's one of those things from last century that just isn't true. There's a great book out for those of you who are readers by the name of The Human Brand. And its intent, it's a research study. Its intent was to study millennials and understand how they play in the world today. Well, the outcome of the book absolutely did what they set out to do, but to me it went way beyond the millennials. It really talked to all of us, not just, you know, those under 40 or whatever the millennial age is. And here's some of the things they learned. They learned that millennials care a great deal about a couple of things. One of them is, if they don't trust you, they won't work for you, they won't buy from you, they'll do their best not even to talk to you if they don't trust you. Now, parallel to that trust is they believe the world's completely transparent today. And they can find everything they need to find on their phone. And part of what that tells us who are a little older is if we want to hire or do business with millennials, we have to intentionally be transparent. Because what do you think the millennial believes if they don't find us? You were hiding. Yeah, they got something that they don't want me to know, and they're hiding it. Whether that's true or just we're ignorant and we don't do anything to be found, it doesn't matter. That's what they think. Some other things that came out of that is millennials believe there are two kinds of companies, and since it's transparent, they're going to decide which you are very quickly. One company makes money with their customer. You know, they improve their customer's world in some way, shape, or form. The second group is they make money from their customer. Now, a simple way to think about that's partners versus vendors, or however you want to get it in your head. But every one of us needs to make an intentional, conscious decision that we live by which of those two things we are. Now, you can be either one. There's still a place in the world today. Some people can make money from other people. You know, if you got a gas station halfway between Phoenix and Las Vegas, and it's the only gas station, you can charge a whole lot more and get away with it. But most of us aren't in that situation. That's another bubble, by the way. As soon as there's a second gas station, guess what? So they learn that people either make money from or with their clients. And the other thing that came along with that was those people who make money with their clients almost always have a worthy intention. You know, they have something that they're doing that the potential client, the millennial, can look at and say, oh my gosh, I think that way too. I believe the same things you do. And so I'd rather do business with somebody who believes what I believe and likes what I like and is committed to green or health or Susan B. Komen or whatever it is. They are much more likely to do business with that firm, particularly if they think you're a firm of integrity, because integrity is huge for them. So every one of us can make the decisions about our own businesses. Do we make money from or with? Do we have a worthy intention? And my guess is almost everybody in this room, I've talked to a couple of you who have extremely worthy intentions. Man, get that out front. Because when somebody believes what you believe, they defend you. So help them defend you. How many of you have seen Simon Sinek's Start With Why? For those of you who haven't, that's the next thing I do at the end of the day. Simon talks, he uses 3 words, how, why, what. And in that, he talks about 3 particular computer companies. Now, I'm going to talk about the companies a little differently than Simon does. But what companies are those companies that if we got online and we went out and we looked up plumbers in Tempe, and you looked at 50 plumbing websites, they pretty much all say exactly the same thing. They would talk about what they do. I take Visa, I take MasterCard, I have a 24-hour phone number, I have a router thing, we've been around for 25 years, our people wear blue, whatever it is they say, it's all about what they do. Most of us can't tell the difference between website 1 and 5 and 15 and 20. So what's our decision criteria about who we're going to do business with? Price, always. Price and availability. Availability gets important if the water's running through the kitchen, but price is the normal. So what companies, and the what company Simon talks about is Gateway Computer. And their brand still exists, although the company disappeared a while ago, but the brand still exists. Their message was, we build really good computers cheap. You want to buy one? That was basically their conversation. The second computer company was Dell. And Dell was formed as a how company. They were online, they were real-time, backed up by phone. They could help you select, order, finance, do warranty, long-term support, upgrade capability. It's all about their process. Then the third company is Apple. And Apple's a why company. For those of you who either seen the movies or read the biography on Jobs, Jobs got up every day in his life, and his mission was to make a dent in the universe. He wanted to give people a new way. He was going to be the contrarian. He was going to change how the world works. And how he was going to do that was, he was going to stand at the intersection of art and technology, and he was going to combine those things for beautiful, elegant, simple-to-use tools for the everyday person. Now, you got an example of the 3 different kinds of companies. Tell me which one do you think gets the highest margins? Apple. 18 points. 18 points. Now think, who gets the most referrals? Apple. Who gets the most repeat business? Yeah. So every one of us in the room gets to choose what we talk about. I mean, that's our business, right? We're speakers. Don't talk about what you do. People only care about what you do when they've decided they want to do business with you. Then they care what you're going to do to get them where they want to go, to, the Joel's comments. So lead with your why. You have to have a how and a what, but lead with your why. These are revenue principles I use. And I'm not suggesting you need to use the same ones I use. What I am suggesting is this is one of the cheapest, easiest, fastest ways for you to change your business. Write down your principles. And then, if you go back to the human brand and the millennials, you better live them. Because the world is transparent. And if the world makes a choice between what you say and what you do, what's the choice?
What you do.
What you do. 100% of the time. They believe what you do. So don't go tell the world your principles and then act like you're making money from them. That's not going to play well, okay? So write down your principles, those things. And the amazing part is, when you sit there and say to a client, you know, Kim, I would love to do this job with you, but it's really not what we do. We're committed to doing this. And while what you're asking is really important, I don't do it. Loretta can help you with that, but I can't. The truth is, you get more, statistically, you get more referrals from people you say no to than people that you do business with. Now, there's a couple of really big reasons. What's one of those reasons? Integrity. Kim standing there wants to give me money, and I'm saying, no, don't want your money, Kim. Thank you very much. Nice idea, but no. So she's comfortable referring anybody to me because she knows I'm not going to screw anybody she refers to me. So she can send everybody to me. And the second one is, I gave her some clarity, and I think that was one of the words Joel used earlier too, clarity about what I really do. And so now she can make good referrals because she trusts me, and she has more clarity about who I really am than my customers do, because all my customers know is I said, yes, I do that. They don't know what I don't do. They don't know the boundaries. So like, this is really important that you live these principles. And when you talk to your clients and you give them a principles-based statement, no, I can't do that, or it wouldn't work for me because, or something like that, you have just demonstrated to them there's another way to purchase other than just based on price. I can buy from somebody who actually stands for something. And by the way, I stand for it too. I just didn't know anybody else did. I didn't know there was anybody else out there that thought like me. But you've just told me, and you've walked away from money, that you actually think like I do. So, well, let me tell you, I think I really do want to do that with you now because, you know, I want what you said, but I just didn't know I could get it. So I didn't have it in the RFP, or I didn't have it in the specs. So principles-based is one of the fastest ways to create more. And do you think your margins are higher or lower when you're a principle-based provider? Higher, much higher. So one of my hopes is you go home and you start to write that. How much time do I have before I'm rude? Quarter after. Oh, got a few minutes? Okay, good. This is a tool. And for those of us, I got 2 minutes. So we're going to do the tool really fast. I like quarter after better. Can I hold her to the first one? If you're scientific, this is the diffusion of innovation curve. And the diffusion of innovation curve has been studied now for 50 years. So this is not, Rick made this up. In my language, this is a bell curve. And on the right-hand side of the bell curve are commodities. So if I need milk or bread or athletic socks, that's over on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side are things you've never heard of before. And if I gave it to you, you wouldn't know how to use it, or you wouldn't know what it was worth, or you wouldn't know any of those kinds of things. 7 after, okay. Okay, 10 after, thank you, that'll help. So what's happening in this curve, why it's important, is because the curve from the buyer's frame of reference is all about, on the right side, they are purchasing stuff. And they don't need anybody's help to purchase stuff. If I'm going out to buy athletic socks or milk or bread, I don't need a salesperson. I don't need a consultant. I don't need a partner. I don't need any of those things. On the left-hand side, I'm not buying stuff at all. I'm buying brain. When Joel did his presentation today, he was selling us brain. We use it because there's stuff underneath it. But we're not buying videos. We can get millions of videos on YouTube. We're buying the fact he knows something the rest of us don't know. And he's willing to pass that on to us. and we're willing to pay for that because we need to know that, not just have videos. We need the brain part. So every one of us in the room has to decide what we sell. Now, if I were to look at 1,000 people, almost 950 of them, even though they're selling brain, they're going to talk to you about stuff. Stuff's the what, okay? And when you talk about what, even though you're selling brain, what's the buyer paying for? Stuff. And on the left side, when you're selling brain, I told you earlier the power of understanding the customer's problem you solve for the customer that no one else solves. When you're on the left side and you sell brain, you price based on the degree of the problem you solve for the customer. So if I'm solving a big problem for the customer, it's actually a rule of 10 to 1. If I'm solving $1 million problem, and many of us as speakers can, we can help them have a new way to do things or a new approach or a new way to measure. We're bringing huge value. Our pricing should be 10 to 1. If it's $1 million problem, we should be getting $100,000. Now, the interesting thing is, there's actually neuroscience on this. If I'm solving $1 million problem and I try to charge $200,000, your brain says, wow, $200,000 is getting closer to the million than $100,000. And I don't know, I've never done this before, so I'm worried, will it really work? And so the 200's getting risky for me. My brain says this is getting riskier than I have tolerance for. Now, the reverse of it is, if I only charge you $50,000 for $1 million problem, your brain goes, you clearly don't understand the problem. If you understood the problem, you charge me more money because it's a big problem. And so they'll back away from it if you charge too little. And I'm guessing there's a bunch of us in the room that undercharge, and we actually chase our clients away because they absolutely are worried when you don't understand the extent of their problem and you charge too little. They're sure you're not going to really help them. Like you have to decide if you make money from or with, you have to decide where you fit on the bell curve. You must know whether you're solving a problem or you're selling stuff. Because just think now, take stage 2. If you're selling in stage 2 where the buyer doesn't really, they kind of heard of what you do, but they're really not sure what it is, and they're buying mostly brain, versus track 4, stage 4. Stage 4 is stuff they've had before. They may not know how to plug it in. I mean, I got to have a router for my house. I know what a router is. I had them before. I just don't remember how you bring them up or how you get them started. So I need a little bitty, tiny bit of brain, but I don't need much. As a salesperson, if you were hiring a salesperson to sell in 2 and you were selling in 4, would it be the same person? No. What would the differences be? That's absolutely part of it. Some of the other things are skill questions. People on the left listen, ask great questions. They clarify, they validate. They're really into understanding why is it you want to do this? And because frequently, since you're bringing the brain, they give you an answer and you realize immediately, well, if that's what you want to do, we really need to do this over here because what you're talking about isn't going to get us there. So it's that person on the left is very much into real depth problem solving, listening, empathy, those kinds of things are what you're hiring. The right side, it's getting pretty close to used cars. High volume, a lot of transaction, a lot of talking, and I'm not making that a negative thing. That's just how that side of the business works. Now, the other things, do you think the marketing is the same or different left side or right side?
Different.
What would be examples on the left side? What would it be? It is absolutely emotional because you're playing to this thing they've never heard of and it's a problem they got, it's big, you're going to solve it. What else?
Asking questions, diagnosis.
Yeah, and part of that says it's kind of a one-to-one thing. The marketing is, either to like a small group or one-to-one, but it's not coupons, it's not newspapers, it's not TV, it's none of those things which fly on the right side because that's stuff. And the buyer already knows everything they need to know about stuff. They're just waiting for price and availability. Got the Cabbage Patch doll? How much? That's the right side, okay? So think now, place yourself on the curve in the 1 minute, and then place everything else you're doing on the curve. The research says you can effectively deal with customers one track right or left of your core. Now, organizations our size, speakers, we typically are value-driven people, so we're typically on the left. And we need to have clients that are no more than one track right or left of us. If they get farther than that, it's not going to end well. And probably you're going to spend a lot of money chasing them, and then they're going to get to the end and say, sorry, made another decision. So that's the tool. The last thing I'll say to you is with this whole MIST principles thing, I want you to change the way you look at things. Because when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So if you want a copy, electronic copy of this, or I have a lot of stuff I write a lot and I have a lot of videos online, they're all free. Be totally comfortable to go steal all of it that you want. So, thank you.
Thank you.